things today. Are we all ready?
We're ready whenever you are.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I apologize for flying through the door, but there's a lot of construction to wiggle through. Wonder who's responsible for that. My taxpayer money at work made me late.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Just to applaud. Stop and admire.
So that was in East Topeka, so we're grateful for that. Welcome to the April 30th Special Committee Policing and Community Meeting. I'm the chair, Councilwoman Ortiz, and I will let the other two committee members introduce themselves.
Councilwoman Karen Hiller, District 1.
Mike Padilla, District 5.
Thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Chief Brian Wheelis.
Thank you. And we also have City Manager with us. That's okay, City Manager. Okay, first thing I want to do is I want to, there you go. Thank you, Karen. First thing I want to do is I want to apologize to the public. Our media friends, I heard on the radio, they put out that we wanted to hear from the public on these things that we will be discussing today, and that was not correct. Again, that was not correct. We will have public input, but not at this meeting. So I want to make that perfectly clear because we received some calls and we received, I know I've received some calls and some emails. So again, not at this meeting, but we will, and we will let the media know when that happens. So to my media friends, please, you make my job a little bit easier, just a little bit easier when you guys get it right. But that I heard that on the radio, and I apologize to those that heard it as well, because that's not what was discussed in this meeting. Yes, Karen?
Could we clarify, unless you have different, a message that you want to put out, we have recently, I would say in the last couple of weeks, gotten some really excellent email communications, people just kind of talking about observations and thoughts, and I have appreciated them when they come kind of one at a time. It's helpful for me. So unless we want to discourage those, I would hope that we as a committee could encourage people to continue looking at our agendas and sending in comments for us to consider.
If they want to send in comments, they can send in comments. If they want to send in concerns, they can send in concerns to add to our bucket list. I should say bucket list, but whatever they want to do. I want to do this meeting right. I want to do it one time. I want to do our due diligence. I know it's not fast enough for some people, but there's a lot that we have to cover. And with people that are bringing stuff forward, that gives us even more that's on our list. But I want to make sure when we're done that Mike is satisfied, you're satisfied, and I'm satisfied, that when we make the recommendation, and no recommendations will be made until we have that final discussion. Because I've heard that out there too, that we had some recommendations. I don't. I have some notes. I have not shared my notes. I don't know what you guys have done, but I need time to process this. We need time to understand what the public wants us to understand and what they're asking for, to see if we can do that as well. So with that said, I just wanted to, again, apologize for our media friends for putting the wrong things out. And as I sit here today, I hope that they will, if they have any questions before they stick anything out there and have us running across the city, that they will feel free to ask either our assistant over there, who I can't see, but she's over there, Liz, or come to me, or one of the committee members, because it just makes our job a lot easier. Thank you. I want to go to the next item, and that's approval of the minutes from March the 19th.
Move to approve.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. It's 3-0, Liz. Liz, how come I cannot see you over there? Okay, all right. Okay. We wanted to have the continued discussion on the outreach and customer service. I felt like that was kind of thrown at us at the end, and we kind of talked about it. I didn't know if either of you had any more discussion that you wanted to bring up so we can move on. If not, we'll move on to the next subject. Yes, Councilwoman.
I don't think I have anything else to bring up, but it would be interesting. I think we brought up a lot of things that were of interest to Chief, just to see if there's anything percolating or any feedback or questions that you have for us.
No, I don't think so. Captain Holtzman and I met after that meeting and discussed some of the ideas, and we're looking to implement at least a couple of those as it specifically pertains to the front desk officer that came through that meeting, but I'd like an opportunity to report back kind of after we've implemented that, and we can kind of give you a more broad scope on how those things went. But we don't have any questions from that particular presentation.
Thank you, and that's good to hear. I think something that has struck me is that as we have continued to learn and just have conversations, some things have advanced either internally or in the community anyway. And so that's
I agree.
okay with me.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great side products of this committee, has given us the example to show of where the discussions actually result in implementations and give us the opportunity to report back. So,
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Chief, did we get that intercom fixed? I was in to see you, and the intercom was broken. Did we get that fixed at the front desk?
We did. It was actually a very easy fix for facilities
As
to
long
do.
as it got fixed, that's all I'm,
It was.
because it drove me nuts, so I can only, okay.
We appreciated you letting us know about it so that we could get it fixed.
That I was nuts, or it drove me nuts?
I had no comment about your nuts comment.
Okay. That was just kind of rude there. Okay, next is a presentation by Dispatch and Operations, and Chief, I'll turn it over to you.
We're very happy to have our regional expert on this topic, Director Burgers from the Shawnee County Dispatch Center, if she'll come forward. She was gracious enough to give us the benefit of her years of experience and her time. I've worked with her for a very long time, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for her. She's come up through the ranks as a frontline dispatcher all the way to the top chair. She ran through an interim period as well. I've always found her to be extremely knowledgeable and passionate about her aspect of the law enforcement chain. So I was excited about her opportunity to present for you folks, because she is very, very knowledgeable. And like I said, her knowledge comes from not only a great deal of education and experience, but also the fact that she started from the ground up and has worked here at the Dispatch Center for a number of years. So I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you, Chief. As Chief Wheelis said, my name's Melanie Mills Burgers, or Melanie Burgers, I guess. I dropped the maiden name. Pardon me in advance, I've got a really good cough going on.
I got some cough drops right over here.
I'm
So
going right now. I am the Communications Director of our Communications Center, and we are a division under the Sheriff's Office.
This is dead, so this tells
Okay, I'll do that. You can go ahead. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of our communications center. We are the primary PSAP of Topeka and Shawnee County, which basically means we answer all of the 911 calls and administrative calls for those that we dispatch for within the city and county. We dispatch for, obviously, the Topeka Police Department, the Shawnee Sheriff's Office, and 3 municipal police departments, the Topeka Fire Department, and 7 rural fire departments. Also, we take on the animal control duties, and we help city and county records overnight for a short period. We also oversee the radio system. We have 6 sites. That's obviously very important. As you look at an officer's duty belt, you see a lot of different things on there. But the primary thing that they use every single day is their radio in order to utilize it for routine radio traffic, for emergencies and such, and communicating in the field. We are primarily funded by the Sheriff's Office General Fund, or Shawnee County General Fund, and then we have 911 user fees that are provided to us from the state. That generally just pays for our phone and radio system only. You can go ahead a little bit there. Thank you. To give the community and this board a pretty brief information on what to expect when to call 911, the citizens really have a lot of questions on when do I call 911? When do I call the police department administrative number? Is it okay to call 911? First of all, I want to be very, very clear. If you're not sure where that call should go, you absolutely need to contact 911. The dispatchers are very good at understanding what resources are out there. They'll push that call, whether it be to the police department or sheriff's office front desk, the courthouse, or appropriate resource. The city actually put together a resource map about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. I think Chief Wheelis actually headed that up for us. and put it out to the public. And so you had numbers to water department, traffic, abandoned vehicles, things like that are not 911 emergencies. So if you happen to call and you're placed on hold for something like that, just know that that reason is because the dispatcher needs to get onto another emergency. That's gonna be something very time sensitive. Maybe mom's calling because baby's not breathing or they've lost a child. We wanna make sure that they get our attention right away if it's something that's not life-threatening. Obviously, fire and medical emergencies come through us as well. I'll just kind of freeform this as they go forward. What to expect when you contact 911? A lot of times, people are calling 911 because this is the most horrific day in their life, or they're just not sure, they're very uncomfortable, they're scared, so they're contacting us in a very frantic state. And they are met with a dispatcher that's asking a lot of questions. Where are you? What's going on? What does the suspect look like? Things like that. I want to be very clear that the dispatcher asking those questions does not stall the response. What happens when you contact 911, we're gathering the location of the emergency, what's going on, and that is entered into a computer. It's sent out to their mobile data terminals and to a dispatcher in the room. If you go into our dispatch center, you'll see 12 stations. We have people that are monitoring radios and phones at all times. And what their responsibilities are to send resources. So oftentimes the person that's answering the 911 call is not dispatching the resources. So when you're on the call with them, it's already in a computer, resources are being sent behind them, and resources are often then being updated as the call taker asks a little bit more information. You can go on to the next slide. This is just a kind of a call flow of what happens when you contact 911. It's answered by a communications specialist. They're going to ascertain what resources necessary, police, fire, or medical. Currently today, if you need a medical or having a medical emergency, it's transitioned over to an AMR dispatcher. The county dispatchers are then still on the line, and they're gathering information because law sometimes does respond on those medical calls as well. AMR will give emergency medical dispatching instruction to the caller, and then the communication specialist or the call taker will then update resources. It's called our computer-aided dispatch, so if I refer to a CAT, that's what I'm talking about. You can go on to the next slide. Law enforcement dispatching primarily, what this body is going to be discussing or may have concerns about. Calls are dispatched according to priority. So what I'm talking about, we're answering 911 calls in our center. They're given a priority according to the type of call, how long ago it happened. Thank you. Suspects still there, any officer safety risks, things like that. So about 18 months ago, I would say, the sheriff and Chief Wheelis, or Chief Cochran at that time, went into an agreement that we could utilize our automatic vehicle locators, or GPS, to dispatch the closest unit instead of just doing it by territory or beat plan. So if you've seen the territory or beat plan, we have 4 zones within the city. An officer from 21st and Wanamaker may be in the Oakland area because they cleared from the station and they're over there taking a call. We may have a high priority call come out, so we're going to utilize their GPS to get them to that location quicker than wait for that Zone 3 officer to be available. So the dispatchers have a lot of screens in front of them. They're making sure that they're sending the closest officers. You'll note on there that I put by memory. The dispatchers that are on the radio will listen to where the officers are clearing from. If they make a car stop in the 2100 block of Wanamaker and we have a call maybe at 21st and Chelsea, they just automatically know that one is closest, so they don't have to kind of finagle through all of the maps and CAD. There's a lot of screens. The dispatchers are responsible for what this screen looks like. There you go. This is just a snippet of our CAD and what it looks like for the dispatcher to track all of the units, all the self-initiated activities that come in, all the reported calls that we receive over the phone. We track them in the computer, and the dispatcher on east or west is primarily responsible for listening to the radio, making sure that the units have officer safety information, call data, They're checked on appropriately. And then they're also responsible for all of our pending calls. A lot of times, actually, you know, right now is one of our busiest times of day, so our second shift dispatchers and officers are holding calls maybe. But with this GPS and AVL dispatching, it does make it go a lot faster and more efficient. On average, our call stats, I threw that in the packet for you guys as well. 320,000 calls are taken a year. As we progress through the year, January into the summer, spring really kicks up a very busy time. Calls get increased, summertime they get even more. If you look at our call stats from whether you're looking at PD or the incoming calls, they'll double by August because it's getting hot, kids are out of school, people are out doing more things, so there's more activity. 107 of those calls are dispatched to the police department throughout the year. And then, as I talked about in our radio system, just over 1 year, around 6 of our talk groups, we call our main channels, there's 2.8 million push-to-talks per year. About 90% of those are necessary for a dispatcher to acknowledge. That is, you know, 50% an officer calling in and a dispatcher answering them and so on. So some of it's talk around, but a lot of it on those 4 main talk groups, it is something that has to be handled and taken care of. We primarily have 2 people that are responsible for our radio system. And I talk about our radio system because it is extremely important. It is a very critical infrastructure to the entire public safety realm. There's a lot of forks in public safety, and we're a piece of that to make sure our officers are safe and taken care of. We have we have an assistant radio network administrator and my assistant director, Nick Hill, who are they're an integral part of taking care of all 6 sites. We go through radio updates every 2 years. At the end of the summer, we will touch all of the police department's radios, we'll align them. It's a big computer network, so we want to make sure when the officer keys up or they muscle memory and they touch their duty belt and they move things around, it's going to the right location efficiently and they get to be able to talk to people correctly. We also want to make sure that there's interoperability with other agencies. It's not just the police department or the sheriff's office that's on this system. We have more than 6,000 users on the radio system that we want to make sure it's operating for. So that's anybody from the trash truck drivers, library, public safety, emergency management, and some of our counties surrounding us. So if we happen to have a chase along the turnpike or the highway, KTA, the troopers, we can all talk together. And we work very closely with the state to make that happen as well. There is some raw call data and radio traffic in your radio data in your packets as well, if you have questions about it. So that just brings me to, very quickly, I'll go over the enhancements that we're gonna bring into our dispatch center. What we're working on right now is we received CARES Act money in 2020 to purchase what's called priority dispatch. We received that for COVID mitigation. We wanted to ensure that every call where a responder had contact with a citizen, that they were asking COVID questions. Just like you're going to the doctor or you're having contact with someone, we would ensure that the officers knew there was potential COVID symptoms or potential COVID positive, so they could put on correct PPE. And then also, maybe there was a different way we could take that call, whether it be over the phone or they come to the station at a certain location. So as we go into this year, what we're going to be doing is enhancing that project. We have groups, 1 liaison from every agency we dispatch for. Captain Stewart's the liaison from the police department, and also their union has also been made aware of what we're doing, so everybody has buy-in to the questions we're asking on the phone. I think it's really no secret that the questions that a 911 dispatcher asks to give to the officers is very vital information. So what this will do is enhances the call taking for the dispatchers. In 1997, TCOM and the county came together in this building. They created call guides, and we've enhanced those over the years, but it was never done in a manner at a national standard level. It was never done in a manner that included the buy-in from the responders and made sure, hey Vidal, what's something that you want us to ask? what's something that the police department wants to ensure that the dispatch center is doing. Sheriff Hill's really big on making sure that we are communicating with all of our partners and taking into consideration what they'd like to see. So this software is going to afford us that opportunity. When the dispatcher takes a call right now, if I take a domestic, I'm gonna ask questions, and then if my partner takes a call, they're gonna ask questions, but they're gonna be in a very different order depending on what I'm doing, if I'm on the radio, if they're on the radio. It's gonna be about the same, but it's not structured. It's not where it should be. They're very, very busy. We're constantly asking them, do more, do more. Here's more technology, here's more resources. Don't screw up, ever. That's not fair. So we want to put a script in front of them and give them appropriate training so they have the liability removed from them, they have correct training, so they can do their job to the best of their abilities, but also ensure that the officers have consistent information. So, you know, one day they're not getting all the suspect information, the next day, man, I forgot to ask if he was armed. We don't ever want to make that mistake. That's one that is an obvious no-brainer we need to ask. So we'll be doing that for all 3 disciplines. The dispatcher's actually currently being trained in that through the end of this month, tomorrow. We're then training on quality assurance. We've created a quality assurance program. This is an enhanced version of that quality assurance program. So then we can go back and then give them better feedback on the calls that they took. Hey, you entered it as a domestic, and it probably could have been entered as a disturbance. Maybe that makes a difference to the way the departments respond to those calls. That could increase the priority or decrease. We don't want officers screaming across town, going lights and sirens because they don't have the right information. So the departments will be able to see these priority calls, the different determinant codes, and they'll be able to create policy, and how they respond to those calls will be able to start with this priority dispatch software. And then it will also go out to their cars as well. This will be done, like I said, for police, fire, and medical. They all intermingle. They all are very, they're partners, obviously. They can all end up on the scene together. The police calls, as we move into this, I see us having this one being probably the most difficult to implement. Police calls are very dynamic. Somebody could call and they're yelling on the phone, and it could start out as a domestic, but actually that was my kid, no big deal. I really actually need to call to report a theft. So they change very quickly, and this software is done by algorithms in the background. So depending on how we answer and ask these questions depends on how it shunts us to the determinant of the call. And then therefore the officers can decide how they're going to respond. This is just in your packets, there's a brief snapshot of what a card looks like. And at the bottom, those are the determinants. So if we go through this call and it codes out as I don't know them all yet, I just went through training, but there's 37 determinant codes. And through those determinant codes, there's emergent, low level, high level, maybe it goes to the report desk. For instance, on a medical call, we can implement a nurse navigation line, so we don't even need a response. Law enforcement can even play into that more if we have what we would determine a site call. They probably don't need a police response. They need resources. They need to go to Vallejo. They need to go to Stormont Vale. That frees up critical resources, whether that be a law enforcement, ambulance, or fire truck, and gets them to the appropriate resources through a phone call, and not tying up an officer to go talk to them for however long. So we're really gonna see a lot more efficiency. We're gonna be seeing faster call times, response times, information that's gonna be consistent for all the officers that go to these scenes. I've thrown quite a bit of information into your packet. That's really a brief overview. If there's anything I didn't hit, Chief, please let me know.
If I was going to throw 2 softballs to you, I'd say one, I think the committee would be interested in knowing what the training is from the beginning that a dispatcher goes through, and also the continuing training. We spend a lot of time talking about the Recruit Academy for our officers, and then the continuing training that we have as we go through our whole career. I think they would like to know what that looks like from a dispatch center. And then I think if you can touch a little bit on the great work that you've been doing on the legislation piece for getting the communication specialists their recognition that they need for being as important as they are.
Yeah. Well, first I'll tell you guys, if you have not seen, dispatchers or communication telecommunicators, they're named a lot of different things throughout Kansas and even the United States and the world. They are now recognized in Kansas as emergency first responders or emergency responders. A lot of people didn't realize that they were not prior to that. Do they go to the scene? Absolutely not. But as you even hear the priority dispatch that we're going into, I'll use one piece of training that they're going to be getting, a sinking car. Today, our dispatchers are taught, get the location, tell them help's on the way, just talk to them. Well, if they're in a sinking car, you have research shows 4 to 5 minutes before that person drowns. That dispatcher needs to be giving life-saving instructions. So with priority dispatch, not only with that, but in a lot of communication centers across the United States and Kansas here, they're giving life-saving instructions today. They're taught how to give CPR. They must be certified in CPR. They must be certified and looking at 7 to 8 monitors and utilizing this technology or next-gen 911 system. So they are first responders. And thankfully here in Kansas, it was recently passed. So there was a lot of support from law enforcement, and Chief Wheelis also supported that, so we appreciate it. Our training, I say that because our training is really rigorous. Our training academy is about 4 to 6 weeks in class time, which is going to expand exponentially with priority dispatch. They must have 40 hours of continued education every 2 years. The training that they just went through, I made my assistant director and I and everybody in our comms admin must be certified as well. So we understand what they're doing. We also are required to sit in the dispatch center and take calls at a minimum of 4 hours a month. So we can understand what the citizens are facing, we can understand what our dispatchers and officers are going through as well. This training is 2 weeks long for all 3 disciplines. And then we talk about just what's going on here in Topeka and Shawnee County. They have to learn the geography, what resources are available to them, what each department has, whether it's fire or law. A lot of our fire departments have dive teams. They need to know which ones to send where. After that academy is finished, then they go into the dispatch center for on-the-job training. During that period of time, they must go on a ride-along with both the police department and the sheriff's office and the Topeka Fire Department. They visit several of the rural fire stations. They get out in the field. They must see what they're talking to, who they're talking to, where they're sending them. Then they practice a lot. They take thousands of calls with a trainer sitting right next to them, critiquing every single word they say, every action they take. Then they're put on a radio environment. That's generally, honestly, where we lose a lot of our folks. Radio dispatching is very, very difficult. I showed you just one snippet of information on one computer screen. They're looking at 7, and they're all just as busy as that one, and they're listening, tracking information. These dispatchers may never meet some of the responders that they dispatch for, but I can guarantee you when those officers' voice goes to a new octave, or they ask for something very quick, they're on it. They are very much in tune with what the officers are asking for, and it's a scary position to be in. And they're taking emergency calls. I would say, also to the citizens that have to call 911, that's obviously, it's a very scary position to be in. The dispatchers are trained also to be calm, empathetic, but somewhat callous to what's going on. If you can imagine taking 100 calls during an 8 to 12-hour shift of absolute horrific things over and over again, they can't personally relate with those every single time. So they do need to just keep it to what exactly is going on right this second. Let's move on to the next thing. Where an officer may go out to a scene, the dispatcher is still taking 20, 30 calls, and that one call the officer may have taken. The vicarious trauma is also where we lose some of our dispatchers during the training process, because they are thrown into this training environment and told, okay, don't make a mistake. We talk about this in the interview. Don't enter northwest if it's southwest. You could cause a delay. Yeah. So they're really not, they're scared. They don't want to make a mistake. They want to do a good job. and they're listening to maybe a mom's called in, and I've called in 911 myself. I've been in an accident with my kids in the car, and I've gone back and I've listened to that call. And I thought, man, I'd be the best caller ever, right? Because I know what's going on in there. Oh, I was terrible. I even called the dispatcher back and I yelled at him and I said, did you send the fire department? There's gas leaking and my kids are around. And I was just a frantic, crazy mom. But we were fine. My kids were fine. I was fine. Everything's fine. But in the dispatcher's mind, they have no idea what's going on. They're thinking of that scene, they're creating it in their mind, and then they're on to the next call. And then the officer goes out and we're okay, everything's fine. So we work really hard with the peer support teams as well, and we try to get ahead of that when they're in training. They're never alone. About 4 to 5 months when they're in, we're kind of pushing them. We separate ourselves from them, clear across the room. Somebody's always listening to them. And, there's always 10 dispatchers or so in the room, including AMR. Now, our staffing is extremely low. We are literally at about 60% capacity. We're always looking for dispatchers. Anybody that is out there, we're always looking for dispatchers. If you want to be a police officer or firefighter, public service, anything, and you're 18, come talk to us. We'll help you get to that point because we work with all of them. I started this 3 months out of high school. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I learned that dispatching, I could be a part of a little bit of everything. And I really enjoyed it. And dispatchers are just really not anything like public safety and a family of dispatchers. So they work very hard, and we are always wanting to do better. And I think that's what this new technology and this new training is going to do for our academy, for our citizens, and our responders.
So if I wanted to be a dispatcher, how would I go about applying for that, Mel?
ShawneeSheriff.org. Become a dispatcher.
Sir, you are our intern chief right now.
Retirement job.
You better not be.
No, I think it's a good thing to get it out there. I know you guys do it, but it's a good thing for this committee to know, starting wage package and benefits and all of that. And we've talked a lot about it. It's a great bridge from 18 to 21 before you're eligible for any of the other public safety fields. And we've seen that career track for a lot of people. And then they've gone on to law enforcement or fire careers, and they have a bigger understanding of that from the other side of the radio.
Yeah. We get to go into the city's academy. We spend a couple hours with Sergeant Campos. We send some of our trainers and our radio folks over there. Unfortunately, during that time, I think they're so scared they have no idea what we're saying. And, when COVID goes away, they come back in and they'll do some observations, just like we go out there. So it's very beneficial that we both go back and forth. The fire department does it. So we're very appreciative of that, and it truly is a gap that I think that the best officers and firefighters have that base. I'm very biased in that opinion that they're better when they start in dispatch because they understand. So, any other questions?
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I've got a couple, three, Melanie, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I'm familiar with what I remember dispatch was, because we'd go back there when I was on the department.
Yes, sir.
And actually tried to build some relationships with the people in there, because if you don't do that, sometimes it comes across in communications out on the street. I haven't been back there since you started doing all of this stuff with the multiple screens and so forth. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, as a citizen, from what you just told us, you've projected a very busy place, a lot of activity going on, and that work environment. I remember one of the things we struggled with back then was, again, short of staff. I think that back some time ago, after we got rid of the Canon string, when we were moving forward with communications, one of the things that was really identified as important was to be able to have a supervisor available for any of the dispatchers who are already engaged in calls. Because we used to do that every now and then, if one dispatcher had something really high priority going on, that a supervisor would make their way to that person to make sure that they were getting all the resources, making all the connections they needed, and kind of walked the floor, I guess, as it were, to oversee, make sure everybody was getting what they needed. Does that still take place, or is it done in a different way now?
It is done, but it is done in a different way. You know, and I don't want the citizens to think of this picture I just painted as, man, when I call 911, are they gonna be able to pay attention to me?
That's what I'm trying to get to.
And the answer to that is yes, absolutely yes. When I take tours through the dispatch center, if I took all of you guys through and we're walking through and I'm talking to you just like this, and you have dispatchers on the outskirts of this wall and they're talking on the radio, they're listening on the phone, and I'm speaking to you about whatever. I guarantee you every single one of those dispatchers is listening to what I'm saying because they're that good at split ear. That is a really, really hard task to learn, but they're really good at it. They have to be because nobody works alone in there. They all work very closely as a team. So when somebody's calling in a 911 and they can hear me saying, okay, you're at 21st and Wanamaker, okay, my partner said, hey, I just entered that accident. So I can go pull that call up, see what kind of call I'm dealing with, and I can assure them, yep, help's on the way, here's where they are. Somebody clear across the room so they're all listening. Then to your supervisor point, when we have large incidents happen where, you know, maybe somebody's barricaded or we need to start doing a lot of callback, those officers will then go to a tactical channel. The supervisor will then take over. And I think what's so much different from when I started in 2004 and even, you know, my mom worked here prior to that when we first came over here. I say we because I guess I've always been around here, but it's so different from then to 2004 to 2010 to now because of the technology that we've put in there. Yeah, we were short-staffed then, but now we're even more short-staffed because we've got way more for them to do. And I think we need to just really slow down on the technology and focus on the people and focus on their training and focus on what we're doing, talking to the citizens of this community, talking to the officers that we talk to. Let's hone in on that training and get really good at it. And then we'll add all the cool bells and whistles. Because they're always gonna be there. We've added a ton of stuff. And, you know, text to 911, things that I just never thought I'd see for several years, and they're here. So I don't want you to worry because I have 100% confidence in every single dispatcher in that room. They will take care of the emergency. I have watched them for 16 years and been a part of them for 16 years, and I can never remember a complaint where they didn't take care of the emergency. Now, there's always been complaints. We'll always have them where we can do better. But not because we're too busy, not because we're understaffed. We make accommodations for that. And unfortunately, that's mashing a whole bunch of radio traffic on one channel for the city.
And that's what I wanted to bring out, because sometimes you hear that from constituents is, you know, I call 911, I don't get what they don't, immediate policemen falling out of the sky, you know, but I want to make sure that people understand that while it's a busy environment, it is a controlled environment because of the people that are working there and the systems that you have in place. And you mentioned something else I was going to bring up. And again, it's a way of how you manage the business in there is that if there's a special op going on or there's a situation that comes up, then there are alternate channels that officers can be directed to. Then they have a dispatcher then that monitors that channel. I do remember we used to do that sometimes, but we didn't have a dispatcher to monitor. So, but having one available, again, that helps direct the flow of traffic.
Yeah.
And again, keeps the focus on the incoming calls. And that's one thing that you mentioned that I had on my list. And the other thing you talked about was peer support. Because I can imagine, just like officers in their environment, you in your environment, there has to be some decompression time. Some time where you take a deep breath and maybe get off that chair for a minute and then get back in. I don't know if that's how it works, but I think that's important. That's part of your training or your work environment, that helps because just like the officers, you got to keep a sharp mind.
Yep.
So you have to be ready for what may come up at you. So I think the peer support is a good piece that you mentioned. Is there any more detail? Is there a requirement to participate, or certain activities or time in a day you spend to do that?
No, there's not a requirement, but what you will find every once in a while is the police department and the sheriff's office are wonderful at including the dispatch center, and I don't know that that's always been the case. On the sheriff's office, the fortunate thing that we have going for us now is we're under the sheriff's office, and we're not this lone island fighting for their attention to make improvements. So, we have the sheriff that's fighting for us. We've always had a great relationship. Well, not always, I guess, but the relationships are well with our partners, and they understand that peer support need, and it's not really taboo anymore. So we have civilians and sworn on the peer support with the sheriff's office. We have dispatchers that are on the peer support team. Sometimes when there's a huge event, there's a critical stress debriefing, and our dispatchers who were involved in the incident are invited to it. And sometimes still today we'll hear, I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that. Even standing up here talking about taking calls, I can feel myself getting emotional because I thought I had this unique superpower that I could walk out of the dispatch room and I would forget everything that I did. And it was until I started talking publicly about the calls, I was speaking and I just started bawling about, oh my gosh, where is this coming from? Because I didn't deal with it. So we talk about these incidents with our new folks. I specifically talk about that with our new folks because I told them I didn't deal with it for a really long time and I didn't know it was bothering me. The kid calls are terrible, and that's what really started to bother me. So I started talking to the peer support. I was one of those terrible people, in my opinion, that I don't need that, I'm fine. You're not fine, just talk about it. So we do invite them. We do make sure that those are always available, whether it's on their shift or they're given overtime to come in. Accommodating those peer support needs are very important, yes.
Well, I appreciate your comments and your presentation, because I do know from experience, there is a critical link between the officers and dispatch, and that has to be nurtured all the time, and it has to be a give and take between those two bodies to coordinate the assistance that we're trying to provide for the community. So I appreciate your work, and thank you.
Thank you.
We did have, when we were talking about customer service last time, I think, you talked about prioritizing calls.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in an age of transparency where you tell people what you know and how you're making your decisions, right? But then from the caller point of view, we have had reports where it was pretty disconcerting then to be told, well, we have the officers out on calls that are more important than yours. So we can't deal with you right now. It might be 40 minutes. That I imagine certainly has come back to you. How have you accommodated that kind of feedback? It must be really challenging.
It is challenging, and I will say that yes, we do get those, and yes, that does happen. Dispatchers will, as I said earlier, become callous, and what I also see the need for is in this training that we're implementing is, as I went through this training, our trainers that are here are not only mandated to have worked in a dispatch center, but also, depending on the discipline they're teaching, they must be law enforcement certified or a paramedic or fire. They must have experience on both sides of the radio. And what I found to be really good in that is they constantly brought up customer service. Customer service is the #1 aspect that has to constantly be focused on, I think, in a 911 center. Because, this person's calling and it is an emergency to them. And it may not be in the grand scheme of priority, but it is to them. And they're the ones that we are serving. So I will say, Ms. Hiller, that when we do receive those types of, that feedback from the community, we take them very seriously. We listen to the call. We don't let it linger. I'm not going to wait until next week. If I'm not there or my assistant director's not there, somebody is listening to that call quickly, usually within 48 hours. We follow up with the person if they request it, but we always bring it to the person's attention, whether it's positive or negative feedback. They need to know that this kind of behavior is not acceptable. And often I find that when it does come up, it was an overworked dispatcher. They just took a really bad call right before that. That's not an excuse, because I don't like to hear, I'm sorry we did that, but it is the fact of the matter. So they are taken very seriously, and I welcome feedback from the community on how we can do better.
If I may then, what is the coaching? What are they supposed to say?
In that instance?
Yeah.
Well, certainly not. We have emergencies that are more important than yours. In what we will be transitioning to and how our priorities of calls are handled, we would explain to that caller that we may be holding calls right now. Unfortunately, there might be a call where somebody's in danger if they're not. You know, obviously, if that person's in danger, we need to be staying on the phone with them if we can. Or at least having them on hold so we can get back to them quickly. But usually it's when the person's not in danger, it's a past incident, or maybe it's a noise, or it's just a nuisance type situation, and we're holding several calls, and officers are all tied up on people who are injured or in danger, properties in danger, things like that. So we need to explain to them that the officers are tied up on where somebody could be injured. This is an important call to us. We understand that you've waited this long. Here's an estimated time that I can give you. Please know that if it's not in 20 minutes, you might want to call back and see if something else has happened. One thing that we worked really hard on, and if you notice in our administrative calls, is we take more administrative calls than 911 calls. And what I want to caution the public on is if it's not an emergency, and if you have time to look up a non-emergency number, that's what we want you to do. Because that person that is in trouble, or that person that's calling back really upset because of this nuisance, and they're calling back every 15, 20 minutes, they're also taking us away from that person that needs us on 911, or that officer that's calling in the car stop. So if they can just be patient with us, because as you know, I know that the police department's doing a lot, the sheriff's office is doing a lot, ensuring that there's enough resources out, and finding ways that we can maybe make those calls go to different locations so they're getting help a little faster. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I think, you know what, I represent older neighborhoods that are more dense and often have more events, let's just say. And so if somebody is calling because they heard somebody outside and they're afraid that something bad will happen, and so they want somebody to check because they want that threat to go away, to get in effect, well, but their leg isn't in the window yet, or they're not holding a gun at you right now, or they're holding a gun at you right now and they didn't shoot it, is disconcerting.
Sure.
And so I know that it's a really tough challenge, and maybe, again, we're looking for solutions as well, that educating people better about the admin numbers and making them more responsive at the front desk or whatever, so people don't feel like they need to call 911, could help to let them do what they're trained the hardest to do. And I'm just thinking out loud here, trying to listen actively as well.
One thing that we do that can maybe offer a little bit of ease is in those situations where someone's calling because they are terrified. Somebody is outside of my house. Well, but they're not with you right now. That's never the attitude that our dispatchers should take, and the corrective action for that is obviously coaching, or depending. But we also work very closely with all of the departments in our area. So if it's close to Washburn campus, or if it's out in Montera in the MTA area, or if we've got a trooper that's coming through, we're going to find resources. That's what also the dispatchers are trained to do. If I see that a deputy is coming through town and I have no police officers available, we're gonna go to the next office available. I got a deputy. While it may be in the city, we're gonna at least ease their mind and start a unit that way, whether that be the sheriff's office or a highway patrol. So we do, especially with these new priorities, we'll be pushing towards that.
I think the other thing too, Mel, that you need to cover with them is let them know is when we are holding calls, dispatch periodically will say, we are holding a disturbance call at this address, something at this address, and a something at this address. The reason why they do that is so that if the officers who are busy on other calls hear that going out, they're close, they can clear and get to it too. That speeds up the response time too, that's that communication. So it's really a layered approach, but what she's talking about with the administrative call load, I know has been a problem since Mike was here. And that's the biggest piece that we can do as the partners and quite frankly, as the community leaders, is push out the non-emergency numbers, because every one of the citizens who calls the dispatch center and asks, what is the number for the forest department? Or what is the number for this? That's time. That is, and when you build that up, and we've done studies on it, and when you build it up across the whole shift, that's like an hour that those dispatchers are on the phone instead of being on the phone with other things. So I think we all can play a role in that part about trying to push out the education. And I'm glad she reminded me of that, because that's something that we need to reaffirm back out to the community.
Well, if I could ask one more then on that, and it seems like I have been told this recently, was that if you called the admin number, it was gonna ring into dispatch anyway. They would just know that it was an admin call instead of I quote, 911 call.
Well, sure, yes, they do ring differently. 911, if you dial physically 911, shows as a 911 call. If you call the administrative line, it shows in an administrative line. So, but the point though is, if I answer that administrative line at 1300, and then a 911 call comes in at 1330 seconds, and I'm still talking to the citizen about the forestry department, can't get to that 911 call.
No, I understand, but obviously if the admin calls aren't going someplace besides dispatch, that's not solving the problem.
Right, but when they can, like, okay, they take that admin call and they're off the phone. It's only the time when the 911 overlaps. So they have to play that delicate balance of trying to do these and trying not to. So I would like to be able to route none of the administrative calls to the dispatch center. And clearly, we have done some things recently where we have a third shift records and doing some things like that to try to take some of the taskings away from them. But there is still a preponderance of the administrative calls that go there. Whatever we can do is helpful to take that down.
Okay.
I don't know that we can.
That just caught my attention,
Yeah.
because it was
Agree.
like, well, okay.
Yeah, and we certainly try to catch as much of that as we can at the front desk and other places, but they all have to be layered and back each other up on those systems. But
Well,
Sure.
and maybe part of our customer service, which we talked about some, is to make sure that calls are getting answered at whatever that key number is, so that people aren't calling around.
sure,
We know that that's some of it, so.
it is.
Yeah, and we're just listening and learning, so.
Absolutely.
Those are the questions. Thank you.
So Councilwoman Hiller had the first, God, it was so long ago, I forgot what it was called. It was at Topeka High
Crime Summit?
Crime Summit, where she brought in everybody, and this is good discussion. And we went class to class, and everybody got to talk about what they seen was the problem or not the problem, or how we could fix it. So this is good conversation. But I'm thinking back to that Crime Summit, and one of my suggestions was a little magnet, which I still have, and I meant to bring them today. Because, citizens would say, who do we call for this, or who do we call for that? So we put an email on there, and we put a non-emergency number on there. And I think this would be another time, and I think this would be a good time to maybe look at that and collaborate. And like I said, I got 20 of them on my refrigerator, don't ask me how.
I got one on mine if he needs one as a sample.
And it was really awesome how we start giving them out, and then for some reason, it just stopped. But on there, it had an email address, the phone, 911, and I think this is something maybe you guys can collaborate
Sure.
and bring back for the citizens, since that is such, because people they panic. They don't know what to call. They don't know who to call, I should say,
Sure.
not what to call, but who to call. And I think with our new ombudsman position, we could even add that on there with an email. And it was just magnets we gave out to the NIAs. They were grateful for it. This is a non-emergency number, 368-9551, I think is the number that's on there. If the number's changed, and because that does come up in a lot of NIAs, they say, well, who do we call? When they
Sure.
tell us not to call the 911, who do we call? And we do hear that. well, the phone just rings, so I just call 911, you know, so.
You know, Chief Wheels, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was when you were a lieutenant that you made a map, and it's been a while, a couple years, and I still have it, but it was a map that was put out on maybe the city webpage, and I don't remember the magnets, I mean, it's
I
been a while.
have that map because I started that map. I stole
You
it
know,
from Lawrence.
I think that was really helpful. I
Has
really
a little
think it was.
helicopter up there,
Yeah.
that zoo and all that.
I don't remember the magnets either, so I'm not sure how long ago that
Oh,
was.
Jesus.
I do remember the map.
But I think that could be something that we bring back and maybe
Sure.
push out, whether, you know, that's on our social medias, or, hey, you know, National Night Out's coming before we know it. They could be handouts for that as well.
Do you
But,
know
you
about the
know,
map, Brett? You never seen it?
it's really fancy.
Oh my God, I just had my hands on it today. I was going through some papers. Okay, okay.
I'd like pictures of the magnets too, because that's a great idea, because when you you don't think about it all the time, but it's right there on the fridge.
It's
if you
right
need
there
it,
on the
right?
fridge.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I wrote it down. It's a good idea.
And the,
Community policing was on it too.
community policing was on there. And that was how the magnet started, because in community policing, so, and then we started something else. So, you know, our officers change all the time. So people was like, who's my community officer? Who's my community officer? Well, I don't know. And then they changed. So what we did was we had the supervisor, and he got all the emails for the community officers, okay? So he could see all of theirs. And so if one officer was gonna be on vacation and this officer was covering, then he knew, and then he knew the people. It was just great communication, you know? And then they also, it took away from the 911 because they could get a hold of their officer.
Yeah.
You know, they would email that. So I will get with you, Chief, and show you how that was set up. I don't know if it's still set up like that, but that's how it was.
Well, if it's the CPO map you're talking about, where it's broken down, we still have those maps around.
No, she's not talking about that. She's talking
Well-
about a map. It's just a little kind of fun map of the city, and it has like the zoo and the municipal code and all
Perfect.
that. It was really cool, and I stole it from Lawrence, and then we've done it a couple times.
You know,
But
we
H&D has
we
it.
get a lot of calls like that as well, you know, who's our community officer? And I think, you know, those maps are still available, and maybe just need to be re-pushed out, but
But
those are
on these
calls-
magnets, we had community policing, right?
Just the 2,500 number. the
Yeah, we
368,
had,
the
but
main
you could
one.
also email them, and it'll go straight to the supervisor with any concerns, and they could call that, or, you know,
Sure.
and that's how they got a hold of them.
Yeah.
Because if people are changing, or if they're trying to get a hold of that officer, and he's on vacation, or sick leave, or whatever, once they don't hear anything,
All around.
guess what they start doing? They start calling whoever they can call.
Sure, sure.
And that's why, Mr. Padilla, we talked about the ombudsman, that they need a number that they can call and get that information to take it off the employees of the city, but you need that too, you know, for the same reason, to take it off of you. So I'll bring this back up to the chief, and like I said, I got 20 of them on my refrigerator, and people loved it. They were grabbing it. They were grabbing the maps, old and new, because you're right, they put them on their refrigerator,
Yeah.
and they I was giving them out like candy, but I think that would be, if we can see a way to help, I think that would be very, very good to do that, to make some new magnets, or to look at that, and also update our maps.
Have it out right in time for National Night Out would be
Yeah.
Yeah,
perfect.
Monique should have those maps.
Oh, and I think
City
they
manager.
got shared with Safe Streets also.
Thanks.
It's online, I'm sending the link now.
Oh, okay,
Alright.
it's online?
It's still online,
Send it to me and I'll show it to them. Okay.
kind of.
Anyway, I have some questions. Are you done, Councilwoman?
Just making me think of comments, if I can throw a comment in while we talk about this. The issue is that as long as, if we have that network of the phone numbers and the different emails, and I know you're working on it, we have to make sure they get answered promptly.
Yep.
And so if, for instance, and we've talked about this already, if the CPO number says, we'll get back to you within 72 hours, and all they wanted to know was whether they were calling the right place and so on, they're gonna keep calling. And so for us to think about that whole instant, immediate question answering and referral, and so that they only have to call once, wherever we think that place is, will help a lot, I think.
I think it's a great opportunity to look at it from top to bottom. If we're going to revamp some packaging stuff to go out, look at it top to bottom.
There you go. Okay, and then, that's what she's talking about. Okay, I have some, are you through, Councilwoman? Okay,
Okay.
yeah. You forgot about it? Oh, my goodness.
Didn't print it out, that's why.
Redact that from the,
Well, as a case in point, don't change any phone numbers, because people keep those magnets for like 30 years or whatever, and, or the maps, and so.
well, we have to change to update it, or there's
Not
not gonna get it.
necessarily, they kept
It's broad
adding new
categories.
ones, and so maybe we can stick with the old
That's
ones.
that's just something, we really need to update that, because if something has changed.
Oh, sure.
We really need to update it.
Sure.
Okay, so I was looking on here, because I was one of the people that asked, first of all, Melanie, I want to congratulate you and your team on your first responders.
Thank you.
That's awesome. That's
Thank you.
awesome. And you're making them a part of the team, and when you make somebody a part of the team, you're giving them that ownership, so they're buying into it. So
It's
they-
also the sign of a great leader. She's doing a great job.
Yes,
Yeah.
good job,
Thank
good job. But I wanted to see in here, this is really interesting, what I can see with my glasses even, but this is all the stuff that that the, or not the responders, but the
Communication specialist.
communication specialists, what they can see, right?
What
What
is-
is this what they see, or?
Yes.
What do the officers see? Did you,
So they'll see what the answers are. We're actually working through that right now. That's kind of caused kind of a hiccup. We have a interface between our CAD with AMR and our main 911 center. And everything that goes back and forth is now being shown on the officers' MDTs, and it is a lot of information. It is like, are they changing color? Are they clammy? Every question and their answer is going into the officer's narrative. So what we're working through actually right now at this point is putting that into a separate tab, so they're not having to fish through all of that. That actually just happened this week. It's a long time project that we really wanted to make sure we could communicate with the AMR dispatchers and our dispatchers through EMS, and sometimes law needs them. So when we go live with this, that card that you see, that's gonna be part of that buy-in. What do the officers need to see? Maybe they don't need to see, I don't have an example off the top of my head for the police protocol, because we're really working with the medical one right now. There's a ton they don't need to see, and it muddies up the water. So at this point, when we take a call from a citizen, they get remarks of everything we ask. Obviously their address, location, first nature of the call, the phone number, if they want to be seen, where they're going to be seen, and then we're gathering, is a suspect involved? Is there a weapon involved? What are they wearing? And while that person's going, I took a call the other day, and this woman says that there was three males. They were walking through a park, and I knew that the call was in. I knew officers were going, and so I told her, okay, I want to start with one of the people. Tell me, what race, are they male or female, what are they wearing, and then we'll just keep going down the line. And as the officers were going, because I had time to do that, the officers are seeing all of that information, if they can, per their policy, if they can have time to look at the MDT, but it's also given to them over the radio.
okay. I guess there was a program, what was it, Homebound? No,
Take Me Home.
Take Me Home. And so that was very interesting. I wanted to say Home Alone, but Take Me Home.
So,
But-
any of those programs too, I will say that we have alerts also built in. So if the police department comes up with a new program, there's ability to add alerts, kind of depending on. So we can do people alerts, we can do home alerts. So if somebody has a gate code, we can put that into an address so we
Right.
can get to them as well.
So is that through this program, or just if they wanted to add it, they could call you so you talked about gate alerts. So of course, this wouldn't probably be under the Take Me Home alert, because the Take Me Home alert was more like.
You could have similar,
autism.
you could have similar information that's gathered in the Take Me Home program database to a specific address that would be helpful for the officer to respond. but she was talking more about broad categories. That would only be one of the potential categories, but any of the information on the occupants, I think, is what you're
Well,
getting
and I
at.
think that would be great. How do we get that information to the public? How do we push that, whether it's a code to your house or whatever? I mean, how do we, I'm thinking of a case that happened where a gentleman, and his wife were elderly, and, you know, they're up there in age, and they were at the casino up north, and something happened where the neighbors are like, no, we haven't seen them, but the neighbors did know that they were elderly and kind of, you know, up there in age, and there was a call to the house. I know you know what I'm talking about, I think you do. But anyway, so the officers talked to the neighbors, and then they decided to go in the house. How could we change that? Because they were like, they couldn't get a hold of them because they were out up north, but the neighbors were saying probably something's wrong with them. So we went in, we made that decision to go in. But how could they get something like that, or elderly, or somebody can get something on those alerts to say, hey, here's another contact, or here's my code to my house if you
Yeah.
need to go in. Is there a program for that? Can we start a program for that?
We can
You're probably
start.
thinking, I hate that I came to this meeting.
No, you know, no.
I just think that would be so helpful.
All right, so Liz has notes. You know, we have our website, but usually how this stems is from a medical call. Because somebody's fallen in the house and,
Right.
you know, their family member comes over and they say, hey, next time, here's the code, or where's the key, whatever. But being more proactive in that, I think that's a great idea. And I think what we could do is maybe update our website so people can, and they could have a link, whether it's on the police or wherever they're going. Because in my mind, I'm not thinking that the general public's gonna think, I'm gonna tell 911 that. They're usually thinking I'm gonna tell the responders that, but we're the keeper of all of that. So
You
we could
really
put-
are.
Yeah, we could put links out, and then we could create an email address that's checked bi-weekly or every week or so, depending on the volume, and then we could just add those alerts in. That would be very easy to obtain and do.
But just because it's not issued in there as an alert, a lot of times the dispatch center or the officer asks for it, or the dispatch center takes the initiative to look at past calls to provide the information in there. So there could be a matter of just looking at some past calls too and adding some alerts, but just because it's not an alert doesn't mean that the information is not
Right.
available to the dispatch center and could be relayed to the officers if they ask for it.
Yeah.
And you know, when Chief Cochran talked about the Take Me Home, I thought about, you know, people that have autism kids or blind or deaf or whatever, and I'll push our end to really push this, because it's a secret. This is something great that we're just not tooting our horn about. And we need to let more people know about that. Because I think the more information is what I'm hearing, the more information the officers have,
Yeah.
the better. And I just think that's something that we really need to work on to get out there to the public with our magnets as well. Let's see. What do you do when an officer doesn't answer his radio?
We have a policy that currently today, we'll call them once, we'll say their unit number, their name. If they don't answer, we start them a back if they're on a call. When we have a back on the way, then we tone them. It's essentially simulcasting on several of the frequencies. This has been in place for several years, and we continue to call them until they either have a back unit with them or they start contacting us on the radio. Their radios also have a feature on it that's called, it's their emergency button. It's an orange button. The problem with it is it looks super fun to all of the officers' kids, so they want to go home and they push that orange button. So it happens more on a fun type basis, you know, thankfully, than it happens on a serious nature. The radios are programmed now that if they push the orange button and they can't talk, or if they're keying up, because digitally, when key ups happen, it doesn't come across the dispatcher's ear like it used to. So key ups in a fight are not as good as hitting that orange button. It opens their mic for 20 seconds, and we programmed it that way a couple years ago, so we know this officer's in trouble, we'll start them help, and there's a protocol for that currently.
Awesome. Do you still offer the public to come and view the dispatch center?
Absolutely, yeah. You know, we were closed for a long time. And just recently, we're kind of opening up, we're allowing observers, now that we've had all of our dispatchers the opportunity to be vaccinated, and we've had some time, and now we're all starting to get these colds. It's super fun. But yes, you know, we absolutely welcome the public to come in. It's eye-opening, and inevitably, somebody knows someone that wants to come and do this for a career. So I think it's a win-win for the community and that person to get to view it, and they can always reach out to us, and we'd be happy to have them.
I was one of those people that didn't like dispatch. I thought they were terrible, and they were way back when I was a Neighborhood Improvement Association president, and I came through dispatch, and I shut my mouth after that. You know, because I just, like, all those screens and, you know, the calls, I sat there for, I think I could hold out about 20 minutes, and then I had to get up. So appreciate what you do.
Thanks.
If this committee could do anything to help you, you know, I look forward to seeing the magnets or the map or whatever advice you can give us. We
Okay.
would surely appreciate that. Yes.
Madam Chair, it jogged my memory. At one time, because there was a lack of personnel, trained personnel, I thought, was it call area Votech or?
Washburn.
They-
tried.
Washburn Tech.
Washburn
Tech.
Tech now? Do they still offer?
It's a great opportunity to talk about that, Mel.
Yeah, it's not going right now, unfortunately. You know, we started this a few years ago at Washburn Tech of doing a communications class, and, you know, you're correct. It was very interesting, I will say. I think we went into it thinking, you know, we're gonna get a ton of great applicants for us. While we got applicants, yes, it wasn't, you know, a floodgate, but we also were able to employ some of the dispatch centers around us, MTA, Washburn. We work with them, so we want them to be good. Now, when COVID happened, you know, 90% of what they did was observation and clinical hours in dispatch, and we couldn't allow that any longer. So also, we had a training manager that was the instructor. They moved on, and it just kind of all came to fruition. So they had several instructors during that time leave, and so they were kind of trying to figure out which classes would keep going. So we don't have a class through Washburn Tech at this moment, but we work really closely with TCALC. The police department has a program there for public safety, and I'm really impressed with what I've seen at TCALC. They are doing some amazing things with those kids. They do put dispatch on the list. We've sent some dispatchers in there to be interviewed. They've got some folks that want to become dispatchers, whether that's a stepping stone or career. I sit on the board out there and I see what the officers have put together, and man, they've got a passion for really getting those kids put together. There's a student on the board, there's a parent on the board. They're very engaged. So not only is it a benefit for the police department, I think, you know, we are always a benefit for that recruiting because we hire younger, and hopefully we can hold on to them, but they'll go over. So we don't currently have it.
Okay. Well, maybe there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, once COVID lifts, we can get back to, because obviously, she told you, the bulk of their training is one-on-one in the scenarios doing it. There's only a certain amount of lecture and instruction that can be done, so.
And they came out of that with some certifications. So as we implement priority dispatch and increase the certifications our dispatchers have, we've increased the needs in what those classes are. And TCALC is offering some of those, so they'll come even more ready. So I really look forward to that and what we can do with Washburn for certifications. So.
You know, it's another brings to my mind. I kind of talked with Councilwoman Ortiz about this earlier. There are still opportunities in the city of Topeka for employment that in some areas we're having a critical need and difficulty in recruiting. And I'm wondering if this is one of those opportunities where this Choose Topeka program can maybe help with that recruiting effort. I don't know what package, benefit package, pay package is offered, but I certainly believe that, and maybe Sergeant Campos will be able to speak to it later, any enhancement to bring qualified people to Topeka to live and work is a good opportunity. And that's something that I hope to discuss with GTP here very shortly. So just an idea.
Yeah, and I just don't think we can reiterate enough. It's a great opportunity for a lot of people, but from 18 to 21, if you're interested in these fields, this is a great way to be employed for those 3 years and get a lot of experience and see what it really is, too. It's just a great experience. And then sometimes, like in Melanie's case, you start out one way and then you end up with the entire career and you end up running the show at the end of it. So we never know how it's going to work out. But it's just a really great opportunity for people to bridge that public safety gap from 18 to 21 by being a dispatcher.
Yeah.
How much does, I'm thinking of call centers. Obviously, you've got more screens probably and more training to layer over, but does anybody do training in just call centers? I mean, this would be a resource for recruiting too, I would think.
You know, we get a lot of people that, we don't do any training, you know, cross-training, because it's usually, it's focused on the types of information that we're talking about, not just really the call centers. I find that the people that we interview or we talk with that are coming from a call center, they have that mindset that, you know, I worked in a call center before, so I'm gonna go work in this call center. Whoa, like, it's way different, just
Yeah,
just
I would
huge.
think so.
And it's not only the calls, it's the radio. And it's the significant multitasking that goes on. And generally, when you're in a call center, you're just focused on that customer service aspect of this one person in front of you. When you're in an emergency call center, it is a variety.
I knew that. I just wondered if that was those basics of the customer service, the multitasking,
Sure.
the using the screen, using the software were worth even looking at in terms of starting. And I haven't heard that Washburn Tech was doing, anybody did classes in that versus just being trained on the job at any place. I mean, I just didn't know.
Yeah, for larger areas like Houston, New York, things like that, I think absolutely beneficial, because they just have 2 rooms this size of just call takers. You're just focusing on that one. And in Kansas and metropolitan areas like Kansas City, even a big area like Kansas City, while they're broken up into small cities, it's still nothing like a call center, like even a 911 call center. So, I mean, I think that's a really interesting point. I'd like to look further towards that. Yeah,
Start what level?
Yeah.
Build up and add layers and things like that.
sure.
Well, again, I can't thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it, appreciate your expertise.
Well, thank you guys for your time.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
And council members, I just want to say that the door is open if you want to go over there and go through some of the busyness that happens over there. I'm sure
Yes.
Melanie would be welcoming.
Absolutely. You guys are
welcoming.
welcome anytime.
Thank you.
I apologize, I will not be staying. I have to go into the dispatch
We
center.
totally understand. You're more valuable to us in there than out here. Thank you. Okay, next is recruitment. And I know that you got about 25 minutes. I'm not going to rush it because the committee wanted 20 minutes to talk about our agenda, so I will stop it with the caveat, you may have to come back, Mr. Campos, but you're welcome.
We might hook him up and finish it for him if we need to. as far
I don't
as
want to
that
rush
goes.
it. I don't want to
Yeah.
rush it. This is one of the things that we've heard of
Sure.
on our list.
I think it's important.
It's very, very important, so I'm sure we'll look at a continuation.
Yeah, Sergeant Campos will be available, I'm sure, if we need him to come back. With that, Sergeant is our recruiting sergeant for the police department, Sergeant Vidal Campos, and I'm sure he'll start off a little bit by talking about his career path to this point, but he does a fantastic job for us, and I know he's going to do a great job with this presentation as well.
I just want to start off by saying thank you for having me so I can talk about recruiting and hiring. My name is Vidal Campos. I've been on the department for 17 years now. Went over to recruiting back in 2017. I know at that time the chief was the deputy chief over there, and we had worked really close together. And I can tell you that back in 2017, our numbers were really low, and so we decided that we were going to do some things with recruiting and hiring. I can tell you that we started throwing money at our problem a lot. One of the things we did was these signing bonuses that we did, and and going to a ton of career fairs, and a lot of that stuff just wasn't working. It wasn't until we started changing our pay increased. That was one of the things that really helped us out. Staying competitive with our wages really helped us out. But not only that, but also we started doing our internship very different, where we used to maybe hire one intern every 2 years. We started hiring, out of the last internship that we did, out of the 12, we hired 5. And out of those 5, they were from out of state. So it works. And it was like a small mini academy, and that's what we did. One of the things that we did talk about right here was steps to improve police officer recruitment and retention. What was really hurting us? So we talked about all those things. So we got together and we put up a plan. Like I said, back in 2017, I can tell you that we were supposed to hire 12 applicants, and we ended up hiring 6. So half of what we were supposed to hire. This academy that's starting on Monday, May 3rd, we're allotted to hire 18 officers, and we're only going to hire 9. And I can tell you that one of those things, one of the reasons why we're only hiring 9 is, one, COVID did hurt us a lot. I'm not going to lie about that, but we weren't able to do the internship in 2020, so that brought our numbers down from where we could have possibly hired some of these interns. We couldn't go out to military installations to do the face-to-face, or also go to the schools to do face-to-face, to do a lot of our recruiting. I can tell you that I did do the Zoom with some of these colleges and universities, and out of the 3 people that I talked to, from doing all these Zooms, 0 showed up to take the test. So that's how many people were coming and joining the Zoom sessions while I was trying to, recruit. So that was a challenge. I can tell you that just with everything that's been going on, I think one of the main reasons why we lost a lot of our applicants was just, especially our minority applicants, is because of what was going on. And it had nothing to do with whether they were disqualified throughout the hiring process, as a lot of them were voluntarily withdrawing. I can tell you that the last applicant that withdrew was a black male, and his family, they told him that they were just not going to support him if he joined the police department. I can't compete against a family member, especially a mom or a dad or a fiance, telling him like, yeah, sorry, if you join, we're not going to get married. Or, you know what, I just don't want to do anything with you, so don't come around if you do decide to throw on the uniform on and go protect our streets. So that is challenging.
And you mean at this point, the events of 2020 rather than COVID?
Yes,
Right.
with COVID and the events leading up to all
Okay.
this, all that has led to 18 to 9. So
I think it's also important to note, though, that we just graduated a class of 15. So and that's why it's so important about the summer internship program, which we anticipate being able to do this summer, because that would have been the class from the prior summer. So those are the kind of things that he's trying to draw the distinction between the 15 class graduating that we just had and the ability to seat a 16 but only get 9 in this class, and try to explain kind of the external factors that go into recruiting, because we don't recruit in a bubble, we recruit in the real world. And I think he's doing a good job with that.
So with the COVID restrictions being lifted, come May, I am going back to the military installations. The summer internship program is actually going to happen. We have 11 interns. The universities that are participating are Washburn University, Fort Hays University, and then the University of Southern Mississippi. So I'm pretty pleased about that. The calendar's already been pushed out. We went from 3 weeks to 4 weeks, so that's so they're actually getting more hours. The interns are. And we partnered up with different people within the city to help us with that internship program. One of the things that we are going to push out come May is our social media recruitment strategies. I'm working with a local partner here to help us out with the social media, but I'm also working with Gretchen Spiker, who's here right now, and together we're going to push out some of our social media stuff. So we're going to be talking about our lateral transfers and how to join TPD. We definitely talk about our 10-hour shifts because I think that's one of our biggest pushes here within our agency and why it works. We talk about, I talked about the pay. I think being competitive with our pay is really important, and keeping up with that, making a difference within our community. I can tell you that the young lady on the bottom left that you see down there, she was a Washburn basketball player. And one of the things that we did with her was that the officer that recruited her was part of the recruiting team, so he does that part-time. So on his days off, he went to go watch a basketball game. Saw her and said, you know what, I think she would be a great police officer. Took the time to take her on a ride-along and then come and applied with us. So I know that when we do recruiting, it's just not one person doing all the recruiting. It takes like an effort from not just the officers, but people within our community, like the city council members, going out there and talking about, the great things that we do here in our department. Believing in recruiting the brightest and most diverse and talented people within our city or from other places. I can tell you that the 9 people that are going to start on May 9th, 4 are minorities. One is a black male out of Fort Hays University. The reason he decided to apply with us, he's not from Topeka, but we went up there and we talked to, 5 different classes from the CJ program, and he's like, man, I'm sold. That's where I'm going to go. It's because of you guys is why I'm going to go join the police department. Not the police department that he's from, but our police department. So that's one of the main things. It has nothing to do with where they want to go. It's what we have to offer, what the city has to offer. So that's what I sell. It's the city and then our agency. So that, I can tell you that really works. Maybe. Oh, here we go. So I talk about our city. That's how we sell our department. And then, I always share this story because it happened about 30 miles from here. I think it happened during Councilmember Padilla's during the time when he was here. So I talk about this story. It's a joke, guys. No, but this is one of the stories I talk about when I'm down at the colleges and especially down at the military installations, right? And I have a little fun with them when I do my hiring presentation, but this is in my PowerPoint when I do recruiting. Then I talk about our agency, and then at the very end, this is what I hit them with. I talk about our competitive pay, you know what I'm saying, and how we always stay competitive, here in the Midwest, and they cannot get a better pay than here at our agency. I talk about our education bonuses. If they have a degree, this is how much more money they can get. We talk about shift differentials. If you work in different shifts, this is how much more money you're gonna get. We talk about our 10-hour work days, especially when it comes to like working 4 on, 4 off. I can tell you that when I tell people, well, if you wanna work 6 days on and 2 days off, and then go work for that agency, but we're offering 4 days on, 4 days off, So that really works. And then I just go down the list of, other things that our agency offers, especially like getting certified as a bilingual officer. I'm one of the people that certifies our officers that graduate from the academy. We now have 10 officers that know how to, that are certified, and they know they're proficient at that language. They know how to read, write, and speak Spanish. Out of the 9 that are gonna start on May 3rd, those 2 of them are gonna get certified by the time they graduate in Spanish. So we'll have 12 now. So I always talk about our agency and what our agency has to offer, and that we come second to none when it comes to being in law enforcement here in the Midwest.
People matter, and you see we got a good one, and the recruiting team is a good one, and the officers are a good one, and that's all I can say is that people matter. And coming out of this COVID era and a lot of the virtual tiredness people have of that, the personal contacts and the personal touches of our recruiting team are going to matter even more. And I think it's what's going to carry the day for us. It's what I'm counting on.
I can tell you that when the officers like make it about that individual, like this officer that went to this young lady's basketball game, like that meant a lot to her. I can tell you that, and there was another young man, Washburn track player. We went to his track meet to go support him and cheer him on. We were their personal cheerleaders. We wanted to cheer him on. Because we want him to come here. You know what I'm saying? And one of them is from the young lady, she's from Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri, and the track player was from Nebraska. And they moved here because they wanted to stay here because of what our agency is all about.
So I remember when, help me out here, is it Sergeant Gogan? Or not Sergeant, Officer Gogan, who was over recruitment?
Yes, ma'am.
Right, is he
right
a
before me.
sergeant? What is he? I always-
No, he's not a sergeant, officer.
Officer Gogan?
Okay,
Yeah.
officer, thank you. I want to make everybody a sergeant.
Yeah, I was,
It's better than making them
I didn't know
all
his entire
I
history
used
of
to
the
make
recruiting.
them all officers and now, but.
That's a good way to go. Better to go sergeant, yeah.
Okay, so I remember when he was doing recruitment, and there was a big push back then, trying to think, maybe, what, 5? Well, it was around, right after his father got killed. Anyway, so we had a big old meeting, and we talked to him, because, you know, a lot of my constituents and minorities were concerned about recruitment. And one of the things that he said was that we can get them here to apply, but some of them, we can't get them here to take the test. And then some of them, we can't get them to pass the test, the math part of it.
Right.
And I know he did a big push, which I was very, very impressed by his presentation, of trying to work with Washburn to get them to pass. Where are we at on that?
I can tell you that our numbers is not hurting us, to tell you the truth. I pass out study guides. They're able to come in, and if they need help in certain things, I'll pair them up with a recruiting team. Somebody from the recruiting team to help them out, whether it's they might need help in math or something like that. But as far as like the numbers go, I hadn't had a problem. As a matter of fact, in 2017, we tested only 53 people. By the time 2019 came around, I was testing over 100 people for that year.
So now we're getting them here.
The numbers are here. Like, I don't have a problem with the numbers. What ended up hurting us was COVID, and then everything that's currently going on. The only thing that I know that we probably need to really take a look at is maybe, and not maybe, but for sure, probably look at another academy before the year ends. Because if we don't, and then we're really gonna be hurting, and then we're gonna be playing catch-up, like a lot. And we really need to do it. And I know that we can get another academy up and running, and we can probably even look at 10. You know what I'm saying?
So you don't feel like those are obstacles anymore?
Those obstacles are gone. Like,
Okay.
I'm telling you, the recruiting efforts, they're there. We're not having a problem recruiting. What really hurt us was this COVID. And here's one of the things is that, let's just say 20 people signed up. When first COVID started, I can tell you that, and they were good about emailing me and things like that and say, hey, sorry, but I can't show up for the Friday test because I'm now in quarantine or my spouse is in quarantine. So where I went from like having 20 people showing up for the test, I might only have 3 or 4. By the time the next month came around, they can't get the day off again because now they're doing whatever it is that they're doing to catch up at work. So those numbers really shrunk. And then, of course, not doing the internship really hurt us. Not going out to the universities really hurt us. That is where it hurt us. Had nothing to do with anything else.
Do you feel like what has happened, I think you kind of spoke a little bit on it, you know, nationally, has that hurt our recruiting? And if so, how, can you give me a percentage? I mean, you spoke about the.
Well, the percentage was this half. I mean, we had, you know, we were supposed to get 18 applicants, and we're only hiring 9. So we lost, where we were losing. I mean, a lot of people are now just voluntarily withdrawing, and that has nothing to do whether they can't pass the written test or the physical test or anything else. I mean, like, here's a good example. My veterans that are transitioning out of the military. All they have to do is just take the written test. As long as they have a current and passing physical fitness test, because their physical fitness test is way harder than what our physical test is here. That's all they had to do. But they're not. They were not signing up, or they would sign up and then they wouldn't get the support from their family. That is what's really hurting us. Is the trend of what's happening now, across the United States with law enforcement in general. It's not that I'm not out there recruiting, because we are, and like I said, it's doing the things that, like this one officer that went to a basketball game or to a track meet, or, maybe buying a kid a Happy Meal because they showed up at McDonald's and be like, man, you know what, I'm gonna buy that kid a Happy Meal. And I don't know, it's just little things like that makes you want to be a police officer.
The questions that I get, and you guys can chime in too, the emails that I've received and the questions that I get is, why aren't there more minorities on the force? And those are questions that have been around. I've been here since 2005, and that's what I heard.
And I'll answer that question too,
okay,
Ms.
let me
Go ahead.
finish here. And I think that a lot of minorities think we're not hiring them, and that's when Officer Gogan had showed me at that particular time some of the reasons, which I can appreciate, but I think they think we're just not hiring them, period. And I did have the young lady that couldn't pass the psych test, which is unfortunate, but because they just, and I know some minorities from the city that they've born and raised, they don't want to be officers here. I think that plays a little part too.
It does.
And some of them do want to serve it's kind of weird because some of them do want to serve, but some of them don't. So I just want to be able to go back, and I want them to hear why we don't have more minorities on the force.
I honestly,
if you could answer that.
I honestly do think that we do have a lot more minorities. Our minority numbers have increased since 2017. There's no doubt about that.
Okay.
I mean, one, we do live in the Midwest, so the majority of the population in the Midwest is white. I mean, let's just face it, that's the truth. If I were to go down to Texas, especially South Texas, I mean, my chief of police would be Latino. Mm-hmm. His number 2 guy would be Latino. I mean, you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like 80% of the department would be Latinos. Mm-hmm. The minorities would be probably the whites and the blacks. Mm-hmm. And that is fact. Here in the Midwest, I think our agency itself, I think we're doing really good compared to other agencies. I mean, I just told you that out of the 9, 4 are minorities. One is a black male, one is of Cuban heritage, and the other 2 are Latinos. So, I mean, to have half of the academy minority, that's pretty good.
Okay.
Not a lot of agencies can say that.
And of the class that we just graduated of 15.
Half were
Yeah.
minorities.
So I think we're trending in the right direction is what
It
it
is.
says in regards to that, but it's all about the recruitment efforts that we've done that's not just standing pat. And I think that's the point we need to make is there are new challenges and there are new solutions. And one of the things he talked about, and I saw the city manager kind of shaking his head up and down, we've already started a conversation about starting another academy in a few months, which would be the first time we've ever overlapped. But the training, and this is an idea that came from the training staff to bring it forth to this. So all these challenges are just opportunities for us to answer and solve the problems. And we have the right people in place to do those things. So we're trending in the right direction is what I think I would want you to get out to the community.
So, and just so I can speak up real quick. So out of the 9 applicants, 4 are from out of town. 1 is from Houston, Texas. The Cuban kid is from Florida. The other kid is from Junction City. And then I have another kid that's, I think, for either Garden City or, they were not born and raised here in Topeka. So.
But I think it'd be good for the committee to know, what's the diversity on the recruiting team look like?
Black, white, Latinos. It's a mix of everybody. And then within that recruiting team, they're either in field operations, like patrol, they're in the K-9 unit, detectives.
Officers, sergeants, detectives.
Yep.
I think rank diversity is important too.
Sergeants?
Sergeants.
So I think rank diversity is important too.
Once in a while.
Yeah, I do.
So, yeah,
Just check.
the recruiting team is very diverse as well.
Which is a big piece of it as well.
Females.
Females, yep.
Big piece of it.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sergeant, you touched on it a little bit, and I caught your words. You said you sell the city of Topeka, and then after that, or in combination with that, you sell the police department. I think for me, that's extremely important, because they've got to like this town, they got to want to be here.
Absolutely.
They really want to be invested in this town to take on the hard job of a police officer. So I think that's key. At some point, maybe you can kind of tell us how you sell that, because, and I've got a little inside track on this, because I've talked with you
Right.
about some of these things, and about how you, like you were talking about, you go to a track team, or you buy a kid a Happy Meal, whatever. And I know lodging is another thing in the interim that you're trying to work with these interns and bring in these new recruits. So I think a little more detail about that. I don't know that people
Yeah,
know the extent of effort.
No, so like, let's just take, for instance, like the internship programs. So some of the people that we partnered up with, it's like Visit Topeka, The Forge, our ambassadors that have partnered up with us. And then they come in and they talk about the city as well. And then they give us a tour of the zoo, you know, a tour of the Capitol. I think Forge is putting on where they're doing, like, all the interns are gonna meet up at the Pennant, and they're gonna talk about the different places that they're doing the internship, whether it's Evergy or wherever it is that they're doing their internship. But they all come together and they're meeting different people from different areas, whether it's from Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas, but they're all coming here together, and then they're partnering up with Washburn, give us a tour of the campus, those kind of things. So it actually works. Ramada Inn is giving us free hotels, they're giving us all the rooms, they're comping all the rooms, and then they're giving us breakfast, for the 4 weeks that the interns are gonna be here. I know that the chief bought us 2 brand new 15-passenger vans so that we can drive the interns throughout the city. And then Sergeant Kopp, who's our lead academy sergeant, he gives them a tour, of the whole city and the county as well. We take them out to the lake and show them that there are things out here to do, So just little things like that, like, really helps the internship, and then it sells the city. And then once we sell the city, then we can sell our department. Then the different bureaus come in and they talk about how it is to be a detective, what it is that you need to do to become a detective, or a canine handler, or all these other specialty units that we have within our agency. And then at the end, then the chief sells the agency one more time right at the end, and he gets an hour with the interns, so.
And I think if they have families too, it's important to know we recruit the families too, to the experience of not only law enforcement, but also employment opportunities for the spouse or significant other or kids. School districts are important. Obviously, all of those things are important when you're recruiting the entirety of the support network for those officers too.
I do want to share a story since you brought that up. So we had we had an applicant that was going through the hiring process. He's from out of state. He brought his wife with him. So while I was taking him through the polygraph and the psych, I had someone from the recruiting team taking her out to go look at the city and be like, all right, these might be some places that you might want to consider, renting from, those kind of things. These are some good places to come and eat, just things to do throughout the city. So within those 2 days while I was with the applicant, someone from the recruiting team took the time to do this with that spouse. So we do things that are not, I guess, normal with most agencies, because most agencies will be like, well, I guess you're on your own. Mm-hmm. The kid from Houston, we put him up at the hotel so that he can finish up his polygraph, his psych, and his medical. Like, he came to us, but we put him at the hotel. So that didn't come out of his pocket,
Committee members, we have about 14 minutes. Do we want to stop or continue on? Because both of you brought to me that you wanted 20 minutes to review.
Thank you, Sergeant, I
Thank you.
appreciate it. I know we wanted to kind of review. You
Okay.
think we have enough time to do that?
Yep,
Okay,
because we can go just maybe 5 minutes over a little bit. We'll keep this, I will tell you what I have on my list, and I will let you know if we need follow-up. We probably will, probably won't take long at our next meeting, but thank you. I'm so sorry to cut you short. So
Thank you.
sorry. Thank you.
You don't have to hang around, George.
Um,
Thanks.
I have a qualified immunity, a citizen review board, outreach and customer service. I think that was, recap on that, because I don't think we finished that. Protocols, deployment, special units and community policing, juveniles is in a category by themselves. We just finished recruitment. Crime prevention was on our list. That will be next week. We'll just roll those, our next meeting, we'll just roll those over. And,
Just a clarification on that.
Mm-hmm.
Crime prevention, crime reduction strategies is what we had, but.
I'm
cri-
sorry.
Well,
Yes.
and the only reason I want to clarify is because crime prevention could be a topic that you're
No,
wanting us.
we're gonna do crime reduction.
Okay.
We're gonna finish, I'm gonna finish the list. I'm gonna start with recruitment.
Okay,
And I'm going to put on there continued discussion, and then that's number 5. Then we'll continue on the
okay,
crime reduction strategy,
okay.
active standby, standard. what is it?
Bystandership.
Blah.
I got you.
Active
Bystander.
active bystander for law enforcement.
I got you.
The ABLE training. Peer support team and city employee assistant program. Discuss, okay, so here we are. We did get a list. Liz, I think you might have, I don't see it in my paperwork. Black Lives Matter sent us a list. Well, actually, they sent it to the media. I never received it via email. But the media did send it to Karen, and we received a list with some topics on there. Liz, do you have a copy of that? I think mine was on the desk, and I think, you have one? Okay.
No, I didn't bring it.
So there were some topics on that.
I put it in a different pile. My apologies. I think it's in a different pile that I.
Chief.
Yes.
See, I think I didn't grab my book.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was just gonna ask him something while you were looking and getting ready.
I can pull it up on my computer.
Okay.
Well, maybe Gretchen can run a couple of copies.
Yeah, I will do that.
Thank you, Gretchen.
You're talking about the media release that was sent out?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It was, and so I thank you, Councilwoman Hiller, for bringing that to us, our attention, and getting it to us, because I still have not received it. Again, if there's people that are listening, that want to send us stuff, we can just add that to our list, but that's kind of where I am at. You guys have anything to add, or?
You know, that, maybe not specifically today, I just, I did get that letter secondhand, and we got some other communications as well, and it gave me pause. We haven't, I don't think you or any of us were sure how long it would take to really do this process of listening sessions and learning. And because the pieces are so interrelated, it's difficult, and I understand that, to try and make a decision or a recommendation on one piece if we still haven't gone through all the dimensions of it. But it did seem to me that perhaps we were at a juncture where we could look and see if there were some things that had been on that original big, long list that people had brought to the table, and whether anything's had been clearly, whether we'd learned enough about them to know whether it was an issue or not, to if some things had developed that were resolved progress worth starting that checklist of things that we could either take off the list or at least acknowledge some progress being made, kind of take stock of where we are and whether there's been progress in any of the areas. And just put that through to you. And 3 of them were, that I thought of, were qualified immunity, and that we've had a pretty strong series of legal opinions from a variety of sources, including our own, but not only our own. And could we at least identify where we're at with that, whether it's an issue that we can even tackle, but if not, whether there's still things that relate to qualified immunity that we can and should work on. The chokehold issue has gone round and round and round, and whether maybe we would be at a point on that. And then at some point, want to address the citizen board issue. I'm not sure we're totally there yet, though we have made some advances with the with the agreed duties of the Human Relations Commission that cover some of the things that people thought were missing in the community. We've also, we spent one meeting going through this really incredibly long list of ways that officers are involved in the community, but there have been changes with the active points. Not sure Chief has decided for sure yet about an advisory board for himself, but beginning to kind of circle the wagons on what pieces are in place already and what might be missing in citizen input. And again, whenever we're ready, you talked about the crime summits. I mean, to me, when we look at citizen input, maybe things like the crime summits or quarterly, the ComSat meetings again could be solutions as well. And so just wondered if there was some starting to pull together of the list.
For me, I really want to get all the information, and I want to come back to listening to both sides, or I'm not going to say both sides. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to listen to all sides, all citizens, all, everybody involved. To me, we talked about the chokehold in January the 26th, I think, because I'm working on a report on everything we've talked about. And in sparking, and when I've been doing that and putting that together, then we just got another update on the chokehold, so we need to somehow, again, bring that back. So I don't want to make a recommendation on something that we have to now go back and look at what has changed, how it's changed. I've also spoke to a couple of 501 kids that I really want to bring in, and I want us to listen to regarding the SROs, and so that's kind of unfinished, so I want to make sure that as we go through everything, that we finish everything, and we finish our list, and then we can go back, listen to everybody that has their input to make a commitment to make this work, because one of the good things that have come out of this committee that I can continuously say, and I joke about it with the chief, is looking through the other person's lens. And we've said that all along. Mm-hmm. And that's so important. But we need a commitment from everybody that's willing to come to the table to make this work. The bottom line is we need the officers, and the officers need us. They really do. And so we need a commitment from everybody so that once we get all this information so that they understand we've gone through it, with things changing, I just want to make sure at that point in time. So I feel like there's a lot of things that we've covered, and we might just need to come back and hit on it a little bit more. But I think it would be a good idea to listen to listen to our young people. When I see signs, and 501 did I forgot the name of it, I sent it to you, but they did I was watching on a Zoom.
Convocation?
It was something, let me see.
Their equity council did
their
did a
equity
thing with the young
council,
people.
yes.
And it is, I had made notes to bring that up. I was talking to somebody about it today.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we need to repeat it really. apparently it was on Facebook Live. It was done Wednesday of this week, and we could watch it ourselves now, all of us. And they're gonna do another one on Wednesday the 5th at 10:30 in the morning.
And the
we can-
reason why I brought that up, Karen, is because I was invited to watch that, and I thought it was very, very, very good. But I also had people say to me, this gentleman or this particular person sits on every single board. You know, people want to hear what the children have to say, our youth have to say, but you know, if I'm a youth and I'm on every single board, you know, they want to hear from everybody. So what I'm trying to do is go out and scout some people that we haven't listened to, you know. And so if you guys know some young people that have not been on the boards, I want to hear from both sides. I want to hear from them that have had interactions with the officers that weren't good, and I want to hear from those that have had interactions with, you know, TPD that's been good. That, you know, so the good and the bad. That's what I'm looking for. Because what I want our TPD to listen to is how we could have done, looking through the lens, how we could have done that better.
Well,
How-
these sessions were just about SROs, I think, not the interface between the,
But some of them talked about
okay.
the interactions that they had and why they support it now. We had somebody on there that said, my family didn't like him, I didn't like him, you know, blah, blah, blah. Got to understanding, now know what's expected out of them. So that was something I was gonna bring up to see if we wanted to go that way, looking through the lens to get a better understanding.
So do you recommend us trying to catch the last weeks and the coming one?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, because I respect all the youth that were on there, and I respect their opinion. But I also want to hear from those that have had interactions that haven't been so good, and what we can do to better that.
Did you say you have someone that's kind of inventorying what all the topics are and what input we've had so that we can?
Yes, I've kind of done that with Liz a little bit.
Okay,
Kind of done that with Liz. I still have that long list of 60 people that 60 some of the first 4.5 hours that we did. So, and I'm going back through all of our meetings and stuff like that as well.
okay, well, that'll be good.
And then, and what it's basically gonna be is a presentation. This is what we talked about, this is who was presented, which in doing so, that has sparked up like, oh, I forgot about this, oh, I forgot about that. Then I've gone back to my notes, and I think that would be helpful to both of you guys.
I do too. I'm
But
glad
because
that's
we've
happening.
covered so much.
Agreed, and I know that there's been I've heard some commentary about the extended amount of time we spent with the department, but I think we still haven't gotten anywhere near how much time we spent with the community when we got started, so I'm fine with balancing. But that gathering of all that information when it comes time to review and decide where we are will be really helpful, so I'm really, I told Councilman Padilla, Deputy Mayor Padilla, that I was feeling a little overwhelmed with it recently, and he goes, what? And I said, yeah, it's a lot of material, and it's been good material. I just don't want to lose track of it as we try and pull it back together.
I don't either, but I don't know what else to do.
Oh, well, it sounds like you've got a good
another thing is, let's say that I want to hear from the public on this issue. I want to make sure that they understand that, let's say there's this is a topic that we can't do anything about. So we want to educate them, and then we want to hear from them, any questions that they have. But if they're going to come in and talk about, well, you need to do this and you need to do this, and we can't do anything about that,
That's the kind of thing I was thinking, if we're at that point with some of these issues, we should say so. And say, okay, this one is, we know where we're at, it's not gonna change.
There is
But-
only one issue that I know of, and we haven't covered that. And I want to make sure that we cover it, and I want to make sure that we cover it in depth, because there's been a ton of conversation about it, that they think that we can do something at our level.
Okay.
Okay? You good, Mike?
I'm good. I think I've gone over those lists and looking at my notes of what we've covered, and I feel comfortable that we've touched on just about everything somebody brought. There's a lot of duplication in those lists. And I think we've done a good job of covering almost every topic, and I try to make my own decision as to whether or not, since we've covered it, do we feel that there's a necessary change that could be recommended?
Right, right.
And in some cases, I think we've done a good job of getting to a good point. So change for change's sake isn't good change. Change that's purposeful is important. And I think that's the one thing that I keep in mind, is that I don't want to be put in a position where, well, we asked you to look at this, so change it. Well, I looked at it and my tire's still filled up and I'm going down the road. So I looked at it, I'm good. Let me go continue to move. And I just don't want to keep beating topics that we have covered, I believe, sufficiently. And I do think that the public has had an opportunity to give some input, which is important. But I do think that helping the public hear and understand what the department has done helps that process, so that we don't revisit some things. Because I have received emails when they said, you didn't talk about that. Well, yeah, we did. And we had a good presentation on it. So until we continue to remind folks that we have touched on your topics, we're not pushing them away, we have brought them up. For me, that helps me dwindle down my list
Right.
of where I would suspect suggestions or ideas could come for consideration. And that's where I'm trying to place it all. And I think, like you, I think we have to be purposeful, intentional, and not in a hurry just to meet somebody's deadline. Because I'm like you, I don't want to have to redo it again.
And I understand, I mean, I totally understand, but I don't want to get caught up in emotion to,
Yeah.
oh, we got to hurry up and do this. I don't want to do that, because we could miss something.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. But I want both of you to be satisfied, and I want both of your input, because that's why we're in this committee together. If we need to revisit something, that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
So,
I guess one more thing from me, and I don't know what your expectations are, but again, you were all on this commission, council, with all the input that we got, and we've all been through the experiences of all of those public events and so on. We may need to regroup and regather our notes and review them, but as far as I'm concerned, particularly as a committee, we don't need to hear that again. I want updates, new information, and so on, and to the point where if we were created as a special task force to really do a deep dive into these issues, to me, it was to kind of sift out whether it was an issue or not, and what some options were. As I'm not, I can't quite see them all clearly yet, but if we did think that there were some issues that should have public input again, I'm not sure we should do it as a committee alone, in that I think it would have to be repeated, the input again and the discussion for the whole council, but instead to kind of winnow down all these issues and create a listing of where we think we are as a city with the different issues and what things need some further attention and what they don't. Just a
Well,
thought.
you know, Karen, this committee was tasked with looking at the issues and coming back to the council with a recommendation. So that would have to, once our recommendation is brought back to the council, that would have to be a council decision if
Exactly.
they wanted to hear us collectively. But that's why this was designed, so that we would do the work and bring back our recommendation.
Understood, but just whether that would involve public hearings again, or whether, I mean, you've held it off because we're doing due diligence now and learning and
We
listening.
have to have more input from the public, because the public is asking to speak. They have questions. They say they have questions, but I'm not receiving any questions. I've received a few, but they want to speak. I don't have a problem with that. But, you know, so we'll have them back so they can speak.
I want to be able to, I don't want to rush it, but I want to be able to begin to winnow down those issues and get some things resolved for for the city's benefit. Because we could do this forever.
No, we're not gonna do it
No.
forever. You might do it
Just
forever, but
checking.
we're not gonna do it forever. And I think as time goes on, and things happen, then this sparks up new questions, which that's what I've seen in this, some new questions, you know, some new concerns. Just like for them, just like for us, as the time goes on, we have questions. As time goes on, the public has questions.
If I may, Chair,
Yes, you may.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, Chief, but I will. We've talked here about getting the input from the community, getting the input from the community, hearing testimony, getting all these emails. And for my part, and I hope I don't step on any toes here, I think you and your staff have presented yourselves in a professional way, but it's in a way that is restrictive to some degree because of your position as the chief of police, and because, with due respect to the community, it can't be a back and forth give and take. I think what we've tried to do is present what might be responses to criticisms or deficiencies, presented information that hopefully will help people understand where the department is today and where it hopes to be in the future, without getting into a back and forth that I don't know that will serve a whole lot of purpose, but just to drag out something that doesn't need to be dragged out. That's just my take. Again, we didn't have 40 police officers standing in front of us at the city council meeting making their comments. We had 40-some individuals from the community doing that. In my sense, I think some of that response that you have provided through your staff has given us kind of a quasi-response from the police department by presenting the information that we've asked for. I hope that, in a way, I haven't put you on the spot by saying that, because I know as a profession, you have to be courteous, respectful, and straightforward. But at the same time, I know that there are limitations on what we can expect of you in response to some of the allegations that have been made about the department.
Yeah, I think that, you know, when we entered into this committee, we understood that our role was more supportive, as in providing information on the policies and the guidance that we operate under, not necessarily formative in regards to your positions for the questions and the topics. And so I'm happy to hear that you feel like that we not only answered the questions, but we did it in a professional manner. That would be my expectation for my staff. That's certainly my expectation for myself. But I think that's what we were tasked with doing, and we're happy to do. It's a good feeling to be able to provide a lot of the good information and clear up some of the misconceptions. And I think all of us have had that experience in this committee, as being able to get through and provide some more information as to what the policies are and what the guiding principles are. But I'm happy to hear, continuing on with what Chief Cochran started, that we've continued to provide that supportive information and knowledge from the experts that we have here at the agency.
Thank you.
Yes.
Related to that and new issues, some of the letters we've gotten in the last week, I would say, and I think all of us have gotten them, have been people who wanted to make input about the hiring of the new chief. You've apparently advertised that position. I don't know if some, how has it gone out? something must have gone out that
Well,
it's in,
I think Brent made
I
a,
conducted an interview and
Okay.
there was, actually, it was a question during the press conference last week
okay,
about what we were doing with regards to the hiring process.
Uh-huh.
And I simply responded that we really haven't started the hiring process at this point. I have made it clear all along that we were waiting until this committee gets further along in case there are policies that are going to be changed so that the next chief is fully aware of the expectations that chief will be held to when they're hired. And so I simply have said that at this point, Chief Wheelis is the interim chief, and at some point, we'll move forward with the hiring process. It has not been advertised
okay.
as a position yet on our website or anywhere.
and when I receive emails, I send them to Brent.
Well,
Because,
that's where I was going with that. I think, I don't always check the headers, but some things have just come to us as the committee, I think, and maybe some have come to but often
But-
things come to the council, which means they don't go to the mayor and they don't go to the city manager, so I was going into a question of what should we do with those? or-
Some of the comments that I made included that I'm committed to making sure that the process will include a citizen component. to
Well,
enter.
they're ready.
Right, and so I did that last time. I'm planning to do it again because it was very beneficial.
Okay, so if, I don't know if we want to get a routine going so he doesn't get 5 copies of the same thing whenever
well, if he
it comes
does, he can
to.
hit delete 5
All right.
times.
Yeah, just if you get something related to a comment from a citizen that you feel I should be aware of, please send it to me.
I just say, here you go, Brent, and remark to everybody so they know, but that's an easy fix.
I think it's smart, city manager, because if you were to get it into a process already for a chief of police, including our interim, and get to a point where almost where you've got into a selection process, depending upon what may or may not come out of this committee's work, chief might say, I don't know that I want to take that job on. So it would be unfair to any candidate at this point until we finish this process. So I think that's wise to do that.
It might help to just clarify that with all of us so that we know.
Okay, if there's nothing else further,
Thank you, Chair.
yep, if there's nothing further, it is 5:15, 15 minutes late. We apologize. Thank you, and we will see you next month. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.